Dublin, a city steeped in history and culture, stands as the beating heart of Ireland, a land renowned for its poets, rebels, and masterful storytellers. Its cobbled streets echo with centuries of tales, from triumphant uprisings to quiet moments of literary brilliance. Yet beneath this vibrant tapestry of life lies a shadowy underbelly, where darkness lingers in forgotten corners and whispers drift through time. Dublin is not just a city of the living, it is also home to the restless dead. Beneath its bustling pubs, narrow alleyways, and grand historic buildings reside spirits bound by tragedy, vengeance, or unspoken secrets. These are the echoes of a sinister past that refuse to fade. As twilight descends upon the city, another Dublin emerges, one cloaked in mystery and haunted by memories too painful to be laid to rest. From ancient crypts to stately mansions, each location carries its own chilling narrative, waiting to be uncovered by those brave enough to listen. The air grows colder near these sites, and shadows seem to move on their own accord. It's said that the veil between worlds is thinnest here, allowing the past to bleed into the present, blurring the line between fact and folklore. Tonight, we embark on an eerie journey into Dublin's most haunted locales, places where ghostly apparitions have been sighted, phantom footsteps heard, and inexplicable phenomena reported. But tread carefully, for some spirits may not welcome our intrusion. As we delve deeper into these dark tales, prepare yourself for a night of spine-tingling encounters and unearthly revelations. Are you ready to confront the supernatural side of Dublin? If so, stay close. But remember, some stories are best left untold. High atop Montpelier Hill, overlooking the sprawling city of Dublin, stands the crumbling shell of the infamous Hellfire Club. Once a grand hunting lodge built in the early 18th century by William Connolly, Speaker of the Irish House of Commons, it quickly became something far darker, a den of infamy and whispered horrors. The Hellfire Club earned its sinister reputation as the meeting place for an elite group of aristocrats who indulged in debauchery, blasphemy, and rituals so vile that locals believed they summoned forces beyond human comprehension. The air around the ruins is heavy with foreboding, even now. On stormy nights, when the wind howls through the skeletal remains of the building, those brave enough to venture near claim to hear faint echoes of laughter, cold, mocking laughter that sends shivers down their spines. Some say the very earth here is cursed, tainted by the unholy acts committed within these walls centuries ago. One of the most chilling tales tied to the Hellfire Club tells of a fateful night long ago. A group of wealthy men gathered inside the lodge for their usual revelry, drinking, gambling, and reveling in their wickedness. That evening, however, a stranger appeared at their door. Cloaked in shadow, his face obscured, he was welcomed into their circle without question. He took a seat at the card table, and the game began. As the hours passed, one of the players dropped a card beneath the table. Leaning down to retrieve it, his blood ran cold. He saw not feet but cloven hooves peeking out from beneath the stranger's robes. Before anyone could react, the mysterious figure vanished in a flash of fire and smoke, leaving behind the acrid stench of brimstone. Panic erupted among the men, and though they tried to dismiss what they had witnessed, none could shake the feeling that they had been in the presence of something otherworldly. To this day, visitors to the site report strange occurrences. Shadowy figures are said to flit across the ruins under the cover of darkness, their forms indistinct yet undeniably menacing. Others describe hearing disembodied voices or feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over them as they approach the old stone walls. Many turn back, unwilling to press further into the haunted grounds. Some believe the devil himself walked those halls on that fateful night, drawn by the depravity of the club's members. Others think the spirits of those who perished during the lodge's darker days remain trapped, doomed to haunt the hill forever. Whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the Hellfire Club holds secrets best left buried. For those who dare to explore its ruins, beware, the past has a way of reaching out to those who disturb its slumber. And once you step onto Montpelier Hill, there's no guarantee you'll leave unchanged, or alive. The Shelbourne Hotel, an architectural gem nestled in the heart of Dublin, has stood proudly since 1824. Its opulent halls have hosted royalty, celebrities, and dignitaries from around the world, making it a symbol of luxury and refinement. Yet beneath its grand chandeliers and velvet drapes lies a secret whispered among staff and guests alike. Room 526 is haunted by the spirit of Mary Masters, a little girl whose tragic story dates back to the 19th century. Mary's tale begins long before the hotel was built. In the early 1800s, the land where the Shelbourne now stands belonged to a wealthy family. Among them was young Mary Masters, a lively child with bright eyes and an infectious laugh. Her days were filled with play, but her joy was short-lived. A devastating illness swept through Dublin, claiming countless lives, including Mary's. She succumbed at just 7 years old, leaving behind a grieving family who buried her nearby on what would later become St. Stephen's Green. When construction began on the Shelbourne decades later, workers unearthed remnants of old graves during excavation. Locals whispered that disturbing these resting places had awakened restless spirits, particularly Mary's. Over time, strange occurrences began unfolding within the hotel's walls, especially in room 526, a space said to sit directly above where Mary's remains once lay. Guests staying in room 526 often recount inexplicable phenomena. Taps turn on without explanation, filling bathtubs or sinks with icy water. Cold spots materialize suddenly, sending shivers down spines even on warm summer nights. And then there are the sounds, the faint giggles of a child echoing through empty corridors, only to vanish when someone tries to investigate. One such encounter involved a skeptical traveler named Daniel Harper. A businessman from London, Daniel prided himself on dismissing superstitions as mere nonsense. But his stay at the Shelbourne left him questioning everything he thought he knew about reality. Daniel checked into room 526 late one evening after attending meetings downtown. As he settled into bed, he noticed nothing unusual, just the soft hum of the city outside his window and the gentle creak of the building settling. Exhausted, he drifted off to sleep, unaware of what awaited him in the darkness. Sometime after midnight, Daniel awoke to a chilling sensation. The room felt unnaturally cold, despite the warmth radiating from the radiator. At first, he dismissed it as a draft, but something compelled him to sit up. That's when he saw her, a small figure standing silently at the foot of his bed. She wore a simple white dress, her face pale yet serene. Her large, sorrowful eyes locked onto his, piercing through the dim light like twin pools of sadness. For a moment neither moved, the air seemed frozen in time. Then, as quickly as she appeared, the apparition vanished, leaving Daniel alone in stunned silence. Shaken, Daniel bolted upright and switched on the bedside lamp, scanning the room for any sign of the girl. Nothing seemed amiss. The door remained locked, the windows firmly shut. He convinced himself it must have been a trick of the mind brought on by fatigue. Still, unease lingered, gnawing at the edges of his thoughts. The next morning, Daniel approached the concierge desk, determined to learn more about room 526. The receptionist hesitated before admitting that many guests had reported similar experiences over the years. Some claimed to hear footsteps pacing outside their rooms, while others described feeling an invisible presence watching them. Most famously, the ghost of a little girl named Mary Masters was said to haunt the premises. Curiosity piqued, Daniel delved deeper into Mary's history. He learned of her untimely death and the disruption of her final resting place during the hotel's construction. It saddened him to think of her spirit lingering, perhaps seeking closure or simply unable to leave the place she once called home. As night fell again, Daniel returned to room 526, this time with a newfound sense of empathy. He sat quietly on the edge of his bed, listening intently for any sound. Hours passed, and just as he began to doubt whether anything would happen, he heard it, a soft giggle, barely audible, coming from the corner of the room. Slowly, he turned toward the source, half expecting to see Mary again. Instead, he found only silence, and a single toy doll lying on the floor. Its porcelain face bore scratches and cracks, evidence of age and neglect. No one could explain how it got there. Housekeeping swore they hadn't placed it, and Daniel certainly hadn't brought it with him. By the end of his stay, Daniel wasn't sure what to believe. Was Mary truly haunting the Shelbourne, or was his mind playing tricks on him? One thing was certain, he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd shared his room with something, or someone, Otherworldly.to this day, Room 526 remains both feared and sought after by visitors eager to experience the supernatural firsthand. Staff members treat it with cautious respect, ensuring no harm comes to those who dare spend a night within its walls. But if you ever find yourself checking in, remember this: listen closely when the lights go out. You might not be sleeping alone. Kilmainham Gaol, a sprawling stone fortress on the outskirts of Dublin, stands as a grim monument to Ireland's tumultuous history. Built in 1796, it was designed to house criminals and political prisoners alike, though its legacy is defined by the latter. Over the decades, this prison became synonymous with bloodshed, rebellion, and sorrow, serving as the site of countless executions during Ireland's fight for independence. Today, it draws tourists eager to learn about its storied past, but some visitors leave with more than just historical knowledge. They carry memories of ghostly encounters that linger long after they've stepped outside its foreboding walls. The moment you enter Kilmainham Gaol, an oppressive weight settles over you. The air feels heavier here, laced with the echoes of anguish and despair that seem to seep from every crack in the cold gray stones. Its corridors stretch endlessly, lined with rusted iron bars and peeling paint, each step amplifying the sense that you're not alone. Many who walk these halls report feeling unseen eyes upon them, watching silently from the shadows. Others describe sudden drops in temperature, accompanied by icy fingers brushing against their skin, a phantom touch meant to remind them they are trespassing on hallowed ground. Among the countless tales of paranormal activity, none are more chilling than those recounted by the security guards tasked with keeping watch over the jail at night. These brave souls have reported hearing footsteps echoing through empty hallways when no one else is around. Cell doors creak open or slam shut without warning, startling even the most seasoned veterans. One guard claimed he saw a shadowy figure standing in the doorway of cell block A before vanishing into thin air. Another swore he heard faint whispers near the chapel, voices murmuring prayers in languages he couldn't understand. But the epicenter of supernatural occurrences lies within the execution yard, an open-air courtyard where Irish revolutionaries faced firing squads during the Easter Rising of 1916. It was here that leaders like James Connolly and Patrick Pearse met their tragic ends, their final moments marked by courage and defiance. Yet their deaths left scars on the land itself, scars that refused to heal. Visitors frequently speak of an overwhelming sadness permeating the space, as if the very earth mourns what transpired there. Some claim to see apparitions of condemned prisoners, clad in tattered uniforms, standing quietly before the bullet-riddled wall. Others hear distant gunshots followed by eerie silence, as though time itself has folded back to relive those fateful days. One particularly harrowing account comes from Sarah O'Connell, a tour guide who had worked at Kilmainham for years. Though initially skeptical of ghost stories, her perspective changed one stormy evening after locking up for the night. As she crossed the courtyard, she felt an inexplicable urge to glance back toward the execution wall. There, illuminated briefly by a flash of lightning, stood a man in early 20th century attire. His hands were bound behind his back, and blood trickled down his shirt front. Their eyes met for a fleeting second before the figure dissolved into the darkness. Shaken but unable to explain what she'd seen, Sarah never doubted the presence of spirits again. Another spine-tingling tale involves a group of students visiting the jail for a history project. While exploring the dimly lit cells, one girl suddenly froze, pointing toward the corner of the room. "There's someone there," she whispered hoarsely. Her friends laughed nervously, dismissing her claim, until they noticed the temperature plummet. A dense fog began to form, swirling unnaturally close to the floor. Out of the mist emerged the silhouette of a woman, her face obscured beneath a hood. She moved slowly, deliberately, before disappearing altogether. None of the students could bring themselves to return to the jail afterward. For many, the most unsettling aspect of Kilmainham isn't the specific sightings or sounds, it's the pervasive feeling of being surrounded by pain and loss. The walls themselves seem alive with memory, absorbing centuries of suffering and replaying fragments of it for unsuspecting visitors. Whether it's the faint sound of sobbing emanating from an empty cell or the sensation of walking through cobwebs that aren't really there, the jail ensures that its history cannot be ignored. Today, Kilmainham Jail remains both a museum and a mausoleum, honoring the lives lost within its confines while acknowledging the restless spirits said to inhabit it. To step inside is to confront not only Ireland's turbulent past but also the possibility that some souls remain tethered to the place where their stories ended. If you dare to visit, tread lightly, because if walls could talk, Kilmainhams would scream. And perhaps, just perhaps, they do. The Brazen Head, nestled in the heart of Dublin, proudly claims its title as Ireland's oldest pub. Established in 1198, it has stood witness to centuries of history, wars, rebellions, famine, and triumphs, all unfolding within earshot of its ancient stone walls. Its low-beamed ceilings and flickering candlelight have welcomed poets, patriots, and plotters alike, each leaving behind fragments of their stories etched into the very fabric of the place. But not all who linger here are flesh and blood. For over 8 centuries, the Brazen Head has collected more than memories. It has amassed a spectral population that drifts through its dimly lit corners, unseen yet undeniably present. Among these ghostly inhabitants, none is more famous, or mournful, than the spirit of Robert Emmet. A revolutionary leader during Ireland's struggle for independence, Emmet was executed in 1803 after leading an ill-fated uprising against British rule. His final words, "Let no man write my epitaph," have echoed through time, immortalizing him as both a martyr and a tragic figure. It is said that on quiet nights, when the chatter of patrons fades and the clinking of glasses subsides, Emmet's apparition can be seen drifting silently through the pub. Dressed in the attire of his era, his face bears an expression of sorrow so profound that it chills even the most hardened skeptics. Patrons lucky, or unlucky, enough to encounter Emmet describe a sensation of being pulled into another time. Some report seeing him seated alone at a table near the fireplace, staring into the flames as if lost in thought. Others claim to feel his presence beside them, an icy draft brushing past their shoulders, accompanied by faint whispers carried on the air. These whispers are often unintelligible, though some swear they've heard snippets of speeches or pleas for justice, as though Emmet is still trying to rally support for a cause long ended. But Robert Emmet isn't the only spirit haunting the Brazen Head. Bartenders tell tales of sudden drops in temperature, especially in the back room where rebels once plotted under cover of darkness. Glasses left unattended will inexplicably slide across polished wooden surfaces, stopping abruptly before toppling over. On rare occasions, chairs scrape backward without anyone nearby, and the sound of footsteps echoes down empty hallways late at night. One particularly unnerving incident involved a young bartender named Aoife O'Connor. Working her usual shift one stormy evening, Aoife noticed something odd while cleaning up after closing time. As she wiped down the bar, a pint glass sitting untouched on a nearby shelf suddenly tipped forward, spilling its contents onto the floor. Startled, Aoife looked around but found no explanation. The room was empty, save for herself. Shaking off the momentary unease, she grabbed a cloth to clean up the mess, only to freeze mid-motion. Standing directly behind her reflection in the mirror above the bar was a shadowy figure, clad in what appeared to be military garb from centuries past. Their eyes locked briefly before the apparition vanished, leaving Aoife trembling in silence. She refused to work alone in the pub ever again. Visitors to the Brazen Head often speak of feeling watched, even when surrounded by friends. Eyes dart toward darkened corners, searching for movement, yet finding nothing, or perhaps someone, just out of sight. One patron, Liam Byrne, recounted an unsettling experience during a lively Friday night gathering. While recounting jokes with his mates, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Assuming it was one of his friends playing a prank, Liam turned around, ready to laugh it off. Instead, he found himself face to face with a gaunt, pale woman dressed in tattered clothing. Her lips moved soundlessly, and before Liam could react, she dissolved into the crowd, leaving him pale and shaken. The back room remains a hot spot for paranormal activity. Patrons seated there sometimes report hearing muffled voices discussing battle strategies or reciting poetry, despite no one else occupying the space. Others claim to see reflections in the old mirrors lining the walls, reflections that don't match their own movements. Some have even sworn they've shared a drink with a spectral companion, only realizing later that the person sitting beside them wasn't real, despite, or perhaps because of, its haunted reputation, the Brazen Head continues to draw crowds eager to immerse themselves in its storied past. History buffs, thrill-seekers, and casual drinkers alike gather beneath its ancient beams, drawn by tales of rebellion and restless spirits. Yet there's an unspoken understanding among regulars. Respect must be paid to those who came before. Raise your glass to Robert Emmet, nod politely to the shadowy figures lingering in the corners, and remember, you may not always be drinking alone. For those brave enough to visit, the Brazen Head offers more than just pints and hearty Irish fare. It invites you to step into a world where the line between past and present blurs, where the living and the dead share uneasy camaraderie. If you ever find yourself seated in the back room, listening to the crackle of the fire and the murmur of unseen voices, take a moment to glance over your shoulder. You might just catch a glimpse of someone, or something, watching from the shadows. After all, in a place like the Brazen Head, every seat tells a story, and some stories never truly end. St. Michael's Church, a modest yet ancient structure nestled in the heart of Dublin, stands as a silent sentinel to centuries of history. Built in 1095, it predates even the Norman invasion of Ireland and has served as both a place of worship and a keeper of secrets. But beneath its unassuming exterior lies one of the city's most chilling attractions, the underground crypts. These cavernous chambers, carved into the limestone bedrock, house an unsettling collection of mummified remains, bodies that refuse to decay, preserved by the dry air and mineral-rich stone. The crypts are divided into several vaults, each containing coffins stacked haphazardly or propped against walls. Some lids have fallen away over time, revealing skeletal hands reaching out from within like macabre invitations. Among these eternal residences, the Crusader, a towering figure whose body stretches so long that his legs were broken to fit inside the coffin. Another notable occupant is the Thief, missing both hands, a punishment for crimes committed in life, or so local lore claims. Despite their age, many of these corpses retain eerie details: leathery skin stretched taut across bones, wisps of hair clinging to skulls, and fingers curled into gnarled claws. Visitors often describe a profound sense of unease upon entering the crypts. The air grows colder with every step downward, carrying with it a musty scent of earth and decay. Shadows dance along the rough-hewn stone walls, cast by flickering lanterns held by tour guides who recount tales of tragedy and mystery. Yet beyond the physical discomfort lies something far more disconcerting, an intangible presence that seems to watch silently from the darkness. One of the most terrifying stories associated with St. Michael's involves whispers in the crypts, faint, unintelligible murmurs that drift through the stillness. Many claim to hear voices rising from the coffins themselves, speaking words impossible to decipher but laden with emotion. Some interpret them as prayers, others as warnings, though none can agree on their source. A particularly harrowing account comes from Sarah O'Connell, a university student visiting the church during a field trip. As her group descended into the crypts, she felt increasingly uneasy, as if unseen eyes followed her every move. When the guide lifted the lid of one coffin to reveal its occupant, Sarah swore she heard a soft voice murmur her name. At first, she dismissed it as her imagination playing tricks, but when she turned to ask her classmates if they'd heard anything, they looked at her blankly, shaking their heads. The voice came again, clearer this time. "Leave." Shaken, Sarah fled the crypts, refusing to look back until she was safely outside. Others report physical encounters with forces they cannot explain. Scratches appear suddenly on exposed skin, thin red lines forming patterns that resemble claw marks. One man recounted how he reached out to touch the hand of the Crusader during a tour, only to feel an icy grip seize his wrist. He pulled away instinctively, leaving behind faint welts where no human hand had touched him. Such incidents leave visitors questioning whether the spirits of the dead truly linger here, or worse, whether malevolent entities have taken up residence among the tombs. The most active area of the crypts is said to be the final chamber, known locally as the Vault of the Unknown. This room contains coffins too fragile to open, their contents shrouded in mystery. Tourists often remark on the oppressive atmosphere here, describing it as suffocating despite the lack of visible threat. It's also the location of numerous paranormal reports, including apparitions glimpsed out of the corner of one's eye and sudden gusts of wind that extinguish lanterns without warning. Local legend tells of a curse tied to disturbing the peace of the crypts. In the early 20th century, a group of teenagers broke into the church late at night, intent on exploring the forbidden depths below. They pried open several coffins, laughing nervously as they examined the mummified remains. According to witnesses, the laughter turned to screams when one boy claimed to see a figure standing behind them, a tall, hooded specter with glowing eyes. Panicked, the teens fled, but not before one fell and struck his head on the cold stone floor. He survived, but his friends reported seeing shadowy figures following him home for weeks afterward. Eventually, he moved away, unable to shake the feeling that something, or someone, was watching him. In recent years, St. Michans has gained attention from paranormal investigators eager to document evidence of supernatural activity. Teams armed with recording equipment have captured audio clips of disembodied voices, some pleading for release, others issuing vague threats. Thermal cameras reveal patches of inexplicable cold spots, while electromagnetic field detectors spike erratically near certain coffins. Skeptics argue that such phenomena can be explained scientifically, yet those who experience them firsthand remain convinced of their authenticity. Despite, or perhaps because of, its reputation, St. Michans continues to attract curious visitors from around the world. Guides lead tours daily, sharing stories of saints and sinners alike, while cautioning guests to treat the crypts with respect. After all, these are not mere relics of the past. They are reminders of lives lived, deaths endured, and souls that may never find rest. If you dare to descend into the crypts of St. Michans, remember this: tread lightly, speak softly, and keep your wits about you. For in the darkness beneath the church, the line between living and dead blurs dangerously thin. And should you feel a chill run down your spine or catch a glimpse of movement out of the corner of your eye, consider yourself warned. The dead here do not sleep easily, and some may not take kindly to intruders. And so we leave Dublin's haunted corners behind, but have we truly escaped? The city is ancient, its history soaked in blood and sorrow. Perhaps, as you walk its streets, you'll feel a cold hand brush your shoulder, or hear a whisper in your ear when no one is near. Dublin's ghosts do not rest, and maybe, just maybe, they are watching you right now. If you enjoyed this journey into the supernatural, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because there are many more haunted tales waiting to be told. Until next time, sleep with one eye open.